Hello, folks. My name is Matthew, and you're listening to the Product Man podcast. Here I talk with entrepreneurs, product pros, and consultants to help you find answers and bring more light to your product. Hey, my product freaks. In the first podcast with Dave West, which I encourage you to listen to, you could hear what the agile operating model is and the growing need to change a company focus from projects to products. The reason for that need is sometimes connected to following the mood. In some cases, the company would like to gain an advantage on the dynamic market, and sometimes it might be an experiment to find out the best ways of delivering value. This change requires many smaller steps to be taken. On each, you or the company may fail or do it less deliberately. Therefore, today I'm hosting a person, and I have to admit that every time I recall some memories with her, I get a smile. We worked together a couple years ago. She was even my personal coach for a while. Hello, Eva. Nice to have you here with me today. Can you tell us more about yourself and current activities?
Hi Matthew, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's cool to see yet another person who is willing to spread the wisdom of the product management activities and frameworks. A little bit about myself. I come from project management background actually, so I have been working several years ago in the environment where it was all about scope, budget, and timelines, and everyone was so eager to ship and meet the golden triangle of the project management criteria. Long story short, after many years, I got to operate in more like Scrum frameworks, and that started in 2010, so it's already 15 years. And since then, I loved working in such agile environments and also operating with that shift between projects and products. However, actually, a few years ago, I also decided to pivot a little bit and focus my activities on change management as well as helping companies to optimize their processes, undergo agile or digital transformations, and also get best out of the product that they develop, also using the tools coming from Atlassian ecosystem and product portfolio. So I'm helping companies to optimize their processes by using modern management frameworks and combining it with Atlassian products.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I wouldn't say it better. And as we are both working as freelancers, we have been in many challenging situations. So let's start with that. What does the change from project to product mean to you?
I remember a few years ago when I was working also with some of the enterprises, and they were undergoing huge migration programs to break down the monolith products into microservices. And very often they tend to tackle that transformation programs with the same idea of how can we build predictability when it comes to when something new will be shipped, how can we actually control the budget of these initiatives, and how can we actually show that there is an evidence in the form of the output. So effectively, we just have particular scope of a transition program that we want to deliver. So to me, it was like continuously I was asking myself, like, but why this is done? Do they know what they want to achieve? How will they know and recognize that they've got it? So I kind of was coming from a little bit like a coaching background and asking those nurturing questions. Also, in these organizations, people were saying that I am famous for asking difficult questions, but actually they were challenging questions. But at the same time, I knew that we need to have that conversation if we are even starting to see some shift in the narrative. So to me, this whole projects to product type of shift is that we no longer talk only and solely about the scope and schedule. We are not only looking into how many resources we need to allocate into the projects. That shift is purely around being able to communicate how we want to help our customers to change their experience when using our products, and also how we want to equip our organization internally, inside out, to be capable of responding to the customer needs and also to the changes that are happening on the market, in the global economy, and also amongst our competitors. So it's really like, trying to tackle multiple areas when we observe the company internally. It's about knowing that the communication patterns and the messages that we bring to people in the company and in the organization is fundamental to help them shift the mindset and start seeing different perspective.
Thank you very much, Eva. For sure, the topic is very complex, as the shift from projects to products, even from your answer, is a multi-level, multi-directional one. One thing that came to my mind during listening to you was that sometimes the feature factory companies or software houses work on a product in a different way because they think, yeah, we are helping our customers to deliver their product. So they are operating in projects, and there is a small chance to have that shift from projects to products because they are operating a little bit differently. Still, for me, the shift from projects to products many times means impacting on four pillars. Let's call it like that. The structure. So we are impacting the organization structure by the change because new teams or departments appear. Sometimes the software may also change and the teams need to shift also. Apparently, roles and accountabilities should appear in that. So if you go with Scrum or with other framework like Safe or whatever else, probably you consider having people from that particular framework. It's more important to have the accountability and responsibility for that, but not to have the role and the labels of the role in the company. Then also when I think about switching from projects to product, it means helping out with processes, finding out the waste of the processes, finding out which processes are not optimized, or what processes the company needs to change from their perspective, from the delivery process. And the fourth pillar for me is also the tools and the products that help you to create your product at the end. Many small teams are using different tool sets. Probably you should have an idea of how to decrease the level of complexity when using many tools inside one company, especially if it's smaller one. Those four pillars also remind me that many times we can see different illustrations with comparison when you switch from projects to products and what does it mean. For example, many times people say about switching from profit to purpose. But to be honest, if you are a CEO of a larger, mid-size, or a small company, you will always look at profit. You want to pay your employees and allow your company to grow. Even as a product guy, it might be an important indicator. This will not disappear at all. And from the other side, the purpose. You should always have one as a company. You should always have the purpose why you're existing, why you're doing your products, even if you're operating in projects. So these two things for me should be always in place. No matter you are doing projects or products, for product people, purpose means customer problem we want to solve. The next one that came to my mind is hierarchy. On one hand, we can say, yeah, there is a need to have an extended hierarchy or to have a more structured hierarchy and also having a matrix hierarchy. And in the product oriented companies, probably you should work more with networks of communication, networks of connection between teams. It will be more effective for the company if you have these networks or work with them, even when running projects, not just products. So many times when I see these comparisons, you need to switch from something to something. I would say that those things should be always visible. So, what is your opinion about that? Do you think it's the right approach to encourage mid or top management and say to them, hey, you're thinking in those silos, let's change them a little bit? What do you think might be the first step? What would you propose as the first steps to begin such change?
So that is the question then, how to start that journey. So I would say that change is starting from clear vision and being able to communicate strategically why we even want to tackle customer problems and why this is becoming our focus number one. It's from going, we have these program and different initiatives, roadmaps. There are different type of projects. So going from this kind of messaging internally to more like, hey, over last 12 months, there was a group of customers who continuously struggled with accessing our shopping cart in our web application, for example, if this is web application. And we have seen that there was a tendency to drop off the purchase of the products via our web app from, I don't know, like 80% to 50%. So this is just an example to show that there is a evident challenge. So it's a challenge for the customer who is basically, because of the way how our web app is working, the customer is dropping the purchase tendencies, and basically there is something to be discovered in the way how our application works to make that shopping experience seamless for the customer. And also internally, this is imposing also another challenge. Are we as the organization equipped into a robust, reliable, and scalable, very fast and rigid process to support new operating model that will lead to improvements in our product and the experience that we will generate within our product for the customer. So it's a multifaceted topic, but if I was going to say and indicate some areas to kind of start that shift from, I would say capability to strategically define and communicate the vision. So changing that narrative on why we even want to go into the direction of understanding our customer needs more, understanding what are the patterns, how they are using and operating with our products. It is also considering to have a structure within the organization that is capable also to operate on that kind of value stream creation, because we no longer would have silo teams that one team, like for example UX team, would be doing the prototyping and the user interface, another team would be developing that, yet another team maybe would be having the customer feedback and so on. All of these aspects of the product development as we know it these days, they are strongly interconnected. So that's yet another shift that would need to occur to create those cross-functional teams, even at small scale, maybe some form of pilot endeavor where we would just compose that team consisting of multiple roles, where each of that role is actually crucial for the creation of that value, aka solution that brings value to our customers. That would be the clear indication on how to start moving towards the organization where we do care about product and customer being in the center of that product development, instead of or next to just ensuring that we have a sufficient pace of our product development. Because pace of the product development, obviously, yes, it is important, but the question is, even though we are running fast, are we actually running in the right direction? So this is where I would start, and this is what I would consider for sure.
And what do you think about the pillars I have mentioned? What is your opinion about the roles?
So, I mean, I'm label agnostic, I would say. I have seen in my experience that labeling things just doesn't make a difference actually. For people who have been developing the same product for 15 years, for folks who have been working on the same application for 5, 10, 15 years, it just doesn't matter. They actually may even become annoyed when you approach them and say, hey, now let's switch from project to product. It doesn't mean anything to them. What pays off the best, at least from my experience, is that evidence collection. So kind of, and firstly building the momentum and kind of buy-in with the C-level or management of the company, because they will be supporting that transition from the get-go, and they will be pivotal in this whole change. So I would say, if you have and if you can access the management, the CEO of the company, and you have that chance to operate and collaborate with them, ask them those probing questions like, what do they see as the biggest challenges for their business? What type of feedback is most repeating from their customers? So what the customers are telling about their product. So where do they see the struggle for their product based on feedback from customers? And also, what is that kind of winning aspiration? So what they want to and how they want to build it. It's more like what on the beginning. So what is that they want to see as that unique factor that will be helping them to stand out in the crowd market. So I would say that's kind of the starting point of it, and I wouldn't even at that point there and care about conversation to say you need to switch to agile, or you need to make a hybrid, or you need to use Kanban because of this and that. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they understand that there are, and they actually define those areas where they see that they could do even better. Even better, it doesn't mean that they were doing it wrong. It's that there is still some space for them to improve and optimize. And based on that, you just start that nurturing conversation with that management team. So if they would say the challenge is that the ratio of the new customers is basically decreasing, then you would start engaging with them and asking why it's happening. Do they see any patterns? What happened? Maybe something on the marketplace, maybe competitor did launch some interesting feature in the product, and so forth. And from there, you would basically try to design the ideal picture of their business and product, be it 6-12 months from now. I wouldn't advise to consider planning horizon longer than 12 months, maybe 18 months, because as we know, things are changing so quickly these days that it just wasted energy to plan something longer than, let's say, those 18 months. So I would say, okay, we have defined those problem statements, we've got them. They might belong to the product, they might belong to the process, how we operate as a business, they can belong to the team, the tool area of work, let's say, and so on. So they can, but they don't have to. It's not like we need to label them and we need to group them. It's that we could, but it doesn't matter. We can end up even having just the top 3 challenges that were defined together with the management team from X company. And based on that, I would then say, okay, so what is that ideal picture? So where do you want to see yourself as a business 6, 12, 18 months from now? And then once that kind of definition is established, we have those statements figured out, the next step would be to engage with them and then kind of start engaging with different roles in the company to define how can we get there? How can we achieve? How can we get to that future state of operating model? How can we get to that state of the future where the customer churn is not actually decreasing, but we see that they are staying with us, and also we see that there is a even higher adoption of our product in the future. And this is all kind of designing that operating model of an enterprise, of a business. And then from that kind of, I'm kind of cascading down from strategy, problem statements, challenges, through the future state definition. And then from that, okay, how can we break it down? What should be our change initiatives? How do we want to transform the business? That will help us to continuously and gradually get to that future state that we have defined. And also what's very important is those kind of more like typical, as I mentioned before, coaching questions like, how will you know that you've got it? And I think that this question, like, how will you know that you've got it, or how will you recognize that you've got it, is just so wide question. It's so open-ended question. It is so stretched that asking this question is actually leaving people space to actually think about it. We don't give them the answers. It's them who will define those answers. And very often having the answers, how will you know that you've got it, is actually a great definition of the outcome, not the output. So how will you know that you've got it? Someone will say, I will know that we've got it because we will see that the satisfaction rate of our customers when using our product increased by 10%. So you not only end up having smart outcome definition because you have you have simple, measurable, attainable, timely manner, and so on. You could even kind of incorporate some time frame there. So you not only have smart definition of that outcome, but you actually start thinking about the outcome. So that's kind of very, very packed, very useful way of asking people in the organization, where do they see themselves? How will they know that they've got it? What they would like to become in the future, and so on. And then from that kind of more like brainstorming workshop style, and strategy kind of definition of those cases, you would move on to how can we implement that. And that implementation efforts, I would suggest that they are just run on a small scale first and foremost. So it's like with the product releases, you tend to avoid big bang releases because they tend to actually cause a lot of problems. And if you don't have solid rollback strategy, then you might have big trouble. So what you do is that you learn the teams to release more often, smaller incremental releases and versions of the product, and so on. And you would do the same with the organization remodeling. You would rather see what can you build up as a pilot project, where you would, for example, the pilot project could be, we want to launch, we have defined the problem statement, we know where we want to be with that in the future, we know how we will recognize it. Now let's ask ourselves what capabilities, what type of team, what roles, what framework for work, system of work, what tools we need to have in place so we can work on that kind of pilot setup. The pilot setup would not be necessarily a project. It would be just we create an environment for people who will be operating in that pilot setup so that they can actually see how can they start creating value in the product that will gradually continuously lead towards that future state resolution and outcome, let's say, that which was defined throughout the work with the management team. So this is kind of, I call it blueprint. So you have end up with a blueprint, which is kind of blueprint of an operating model in your business. So you would have that team that is more like testing out what works, what doesn't work, learning, continuously learning. You can consider at that stage, you can consider, would you like to have it Scrum? Would you like to have it hybrid? What is the most sufficient, sustainable, and meaningful way for that team to operate because of the outcome that they have defined at the end? That's why I was saying I'm kind of label agnostic, because I think that what is that we want to achieve is directly influencing how should we set ourselves for that. So this is really like how I would break it down step by step. At the end of that kind of cycle, you would also help that pilot team to collect that feedback. You would ask, what else can we do as the organization to enable that team enablement, the team enablement? What can we do to help this team to succeed? Are we capable to make hard decisions if we see that something is not working? Are we willing to drop off because it just doesn't contribute to what we are blueprinting here? And also, can we pivot quickly? Like, can we adjust? And what is the setup in that pilot operating model where we will be able to quickly collect the feedback about the product development approach, about learning capabilities, knowledge sharing capabilities, about innovation, about communication, about velocity, even if one would be very keen on metrics, about the budget. Are we burning the money, but are we actually contributing something meaningful? Is there outcome to what that team is doing? That is also like a overarching theme, that this blueprint operating model is a subject for continuous changes. And this is where, for instance, there is a crucial role, I would say, of people like agile coaches, change managers, scrum masters, who would be companion to that blueprint team, who would be kind of joining this team, who would be supporting this team, who would be standing hand in hand, but not necessarily interacting too much. It's more like leading from the back of the room. How can I help this team to become even better? And once you've got that blueprint that, let's say, it's kind of meeting your vision, and by the way, it's useful also to have certain criteria established for what would be the attributes of that blueprint team and pilot team that will tell us, yeah, we should carry on, this makes sense. So once you've got it, and it's proven to be working well, and you have that continuous loop improvement and so on, you now can start kind of thinking about how can you propagate that, and how can you maybe also interact this team with existing teams, or how could you kind of spread the bubble in the organization and reuse this operating model across the organization, but also with some kind of terms of engagement, like we don't want to kill something that is working well. So if we are going to join and integrate this team with, let's say, marketing or sales department and so on, so that we kind of spread and make our value stream mapping even wider, that goes horizontally through the organization, then how we do it smartly. So that would be, I would say, stage 2 of the changes in that kind of transformation journey.
You have mentioned a couple of very interesting things. You said that the companies should answer questions like, what is your product statement? Or what are the success metrics? These are very important to answer. From my perspective, it is important to ask top management why they are willing to make that shift and why they are willing to change from a project to a product. What are they optimizing for? What are they looking for? What would they like to change by doing that? And many times I have heard from agile coaches, scrum masters, or other agile enthusiasts at all, the word mindset, which currently has become kind of the buzzword that top management truly doesn't like. For me, mindset mainly means culture, but still, what does culture means? It's the culture of adaptation. It's the culture of continuous improvement. It's the culture of experimentation, to experiment and to learn from it. So you're able to fail, you're able to make mistakes and gather knowledge from that. The real PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, act, and change things iteratively, adaptively. Do it constantly, all the way through, using the Kaizen approach. So those are really critical things, very wise and valuable things to use. It only shows that Agile was born from Lean, to be flexible, to adjust its actions. It's great when we can say we have that culture that helps product managers, product owners, and other product leaders to work in that environment that supports experimentation, learning, and the focus on discovery and small improvements. Still, it's not the product owner's or product manager's job to manage the change. They want to use that already set up environment to make better products. So, do you think those couple questions, like what they are optimizing for and why they're doing that, are critical to ask at the very beginning?
Well, I wouldn't ask these questions. As I said, I would rather start the conversation from, hey, what's going on for your business? How your business is running these days? I would for sure consider asking a lot of open-ended questions, because this is not me who knows the business and operating model of a company and the product. and this structure, let's assume I don't know anything about the business and I'm approaching the CEO of the company for the first time. One of my favorite questions is, what problems are you facing? Or what is that is working well?
So you're gathering those answers by leading different questions, by putting different questions, just to be sure that you can understand them well, and then check out what they are, why they are doing that, and what they are optimizing for. So what is the operating model, their operating model?
Yeah, I would just try to understand the landscape they operate in currently. And when I say operate, I don't mean like internally, more like each business usually is set up just to generate the profits and satisfy the customers. And how would you do it? By providing the products, obviously. And we know that there is enormous competition on the market these days in each industry. So now the question is, how will you stand out? What can you do? What is your strategy to win the customer? And my approach would be firstly to understand, what is it like for you to run the business in 2025? What challenges are you facing? Or what is working well? What is the potential that you already see in your business that you'd like to keep and develop on? So I wouldn't for sure have that conversation, what are you optimizing for and so forth, because it's irrelevant at that point. It's just more like, let's start that nurturing conversation from the general picture overview. Like when we zoom out on your business, being in the industry, having that product, knowing what is your competition, knowing what is the struggle of the customers, what is it like for you to run that business and to develop this product these days? And usually people are talking about, it's hard to keep up for us with the pace of the changes. Competitors, they have much more budget and money to grow the product. Our margin is actually decreasing. We invest a lot of money into marketing activities, but we don't have like long-term customers with us. So this is like, all of those four examples are already great cases that you would just take with yourself and break them down step by step in the way how I describe it in the journey part of our conversation. You mentioned also mindset. I love to break down the mindset word into two. Mindset. Is your mind set for something? If you want to go on run marathon, is your mind set for long months, days, weeks, hours of investment into the run trainings, into the healthy diet, into the exercises different than running, and so on. And there are multiple of those examples actually around us also in the private life. But when I kind of take the mindset word into the context of the business, I would say, are we having people who has the right mind, whose mind is set rightly? And the question is, what does it mean rightly? Or I don't want to use correctly, rightly. So are these people, for example, if we know that we operate in a very maybe competitive landscape, that our competitors are very, very aggressive, are we having people on board who are flexible and open-minded? That it's not even, they can have their own opinions and so on, obviously, but it's about, are they willing to invest time into experiments? Are they willing to change the way how they were working? And so on. And this is, I think, one of the traits that you would check in the people when you, for example, run the recruitment. You check if that person next to the competences, what personal traits that person has. We know from different type of studies that people who are actually not necessarily even subject matter experts in a given area, but they are having that can-do attitude, or they just are embracing continuous learning, they tend to become better employees than the ones that are very like strict and rigid in their subject matter expertise. So to me, it's really like a fundamental component, let's say, in the success or failure of the organization. Do we have the people who, maybe even if they are not that like open, but we see that you can have a conversation with them and they can listen to different point of views, and they just need to have strong arguments, and this is our role to give them those arguments. if they are supposed to try out something new.
Craig Larman is one of the creators of less large-scale Scrum, and he has his 5 Larman's laws. And one of the law is culture follows structure, which means that in a larger organization, and he also explained it that way, that in larger organization, if you change the structure, you will be able to create that environment for that culture and right mind setting for the adaptation, for continuous improvement, and so on. Let's assume we did some steps forward. Those first steps, we have the pilot teams. From your perspective, what are the main early age problems that you're facing with them? What do you see? What do you recognize as the most impactful topics that should be also covered?
I would say I had in mind this the early stage problems would be that kind of learn to operate in that new model. But actually, I would like to revise it because I think that one of the biggest challenges might be, and potentially also the factors it can fail, is that there won't be long term or mid term support from the key roles in the organization. So if you need to carry on something that is innovative within the business, something that people didn't do before, and it just like a big experiment, then you need to have a backup, I would say. And that backup can come from the managing director, from the director where that initiative of the department where this initiative is actually taking place, and so on. So you need to have advocates who will be with you no matter if it's good or bad. And those people will advocate on that team, the pilot initiative, the pilot team, to run even though the challenges. And I would say not having this can be one of the bigger, reasons for innovation initiative to fail. Obviously, people could say lack of budget, but this is also something that goes back to what I was saying on the beginning, that you need to have clear definition of the outcomes, the challenges, where do you see yourself as a business, and so on. How will you measure the success of your innovation, or how will you measure the success of your pilot initiative? Because if you don't have that, then there will be people in the company who will tell you, yeah, but it's failing. You have been working for 6 months and there is nothing tangible, and you burned so much money already. So it's good to have that reference point with the definitions and statements that you defined on the beginning, and have someone who will be with you hand in hand, no matter if it's win or if it's loss.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that insight. I would add to that my perspective, as many times I see broken collaboration. So there is a problem with lack or insufficient communication that leads to broken collaboration between the teams. Sometimes there is a problem with declaring a vision. What does the change mean to me? What does the change bring to people? What is the level of empathy for the people and between the managers and employees? So it's more connected with the change management skills and change management steps. Sometimes it might be an unrealistic time frame because the company wants to make the shift very quickly, rapidly, not evolutionarily, but revolutionarily. I had that in my mind. Some of those issues I've seen, and I was curious about that approach. Do you have an idea why these issues appear?
I love the term system thinking. I like the fact that you wouldn't blame people if something is failing, right? Evidently, then something went wrong when we were designing that operating model, aka system, even on a small scale. So I would say it's a matter of advocates, it's a matter of coaches, it's a matter of people who are joining these type of transformation initiatives also to help optimize the system, not sub-optimize it, right? Because we could react, but the question is the reaction always the best idea? reaction on a given problem here and now. So, for example, there is a tendency that we need to fix people if there is a team that is underperforming. But is it really about that underperforming team, or is it about the system and the model where that team is operating? Like when we zoom out and we look, okay, so that's the team, and then what's happening around? Is it really that this is underperforming team because of the set of people we put together? Even though these problems probably are happening everywhere, in many places at work, I would say find the courage to be assertive and help people to zoom out and see the bigger picture, what can be changed and adjusted in the system that this team is operating in. And only then you can start looking for the performance issues or matters, basically.
Okay, thank you, Eva. At the end of this episode, I have to ask you, what might be your final thoughts about today's topics, shift from project to product?
I see more and more this, and it's positive that many companies are already working with very customer-centric attitude, and they are very much putting the customer in the center, and it's not just a buzzword, it's really happening. So that's great, and I wanted to kind of highlight that. It's for sure different than it was even like 5-7 years ago. What I also wanted to share, maybe as a final words for me, is that do not underestimate the potential of people and how much they can do. And I think that if one would focus a lot of transformation initiative helping people to grow mentally and set the mindset and help them to see different perspectives, that would favor companies a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eva. It is great to end this episode with such brilliant thoughts from you. Thank you very much for finding time for us. Eva, what is the easiest way people can find you?
The easiest is, I guess, via LinkedIn. You can reach me at LinkedIn, Eva Kasiak, Kasiak. Just drop me a line and stay in touch.
Link to Eva LinkedIn you may find in the episode description. And you, dear listener, remember to rate it, subscribe it, put the thumbs up, leave the comment, and share this podcast on your social media. Stay tuned and hear you soon.